I have so much progress to share with you guys today. Can't wait to get started. Hi everyone, I'm Sam and welcome to the Shoogly Stitch, my podcast where I talk all things knitting, spinning, and fibercraft related. It's been about a month, I think, since I recorded one of these, so I have a lot to catch you up on today. I have 3 finished objects, some serious progress on some long-standing WIPS, and 1 new cast on. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to share with you today is actually what I'm wearing. And this is a cardigan that I have had done since I think last September or so, but I don't think I've actually shared it on the podcast. And I'll stand up so you can see it properly, but this is the Kallias cardigan by Isabel Kramer. Here it is. It's an open cardigan. So there is like no buttons. It's not meant to be worn closed. It's just meant to be worn open. It's kind of hits me at a high hip. And fairly boxy, as you can see, drop shoulder, and it's got this really lovely texture. It's kind of a half fisherman's rib on the back, as well as on the front button band. And the yarn is something that I picked up last year while I was in Seattle. The button band actually has this kind of cascading detail, so it's a little bit thicker on the top and then gets thinner as you go towards the bottom. But you can see if I stand close to the camera, the level of color variation in this yarn is quite significant. Whereas if I sit back, it kind of just looks like a vaguely black, bluish colored jumper. In actuality, when you look at it up close, it is this lovely kind of mottled color. There's lots of different fibers visible in there, and I'm not sure if you can see as well. Maybe there's a little bit of a halo if you look closely, and that's because I think it's about 20% mohair. So this yarn is piece fleece worsted weight, although it is definitely closer to an Aran weight, and the yarn was the entire determining factor for making this project. So when I was back home last year in April, I was visiting my parents. My dad had to spend some extended time in hospital, but it meant that I luckily was able to explore Seattle a little bit more than I previously had. And so I was able to visit a few yarn stores, and one of them was the Tea Cozy. And I walked in and saw this yarn in the hang and just couldn't resist. I didn't know what I wanted to make. I kind of waffled a bit because it wasn't necessarily the cheapest. It was reasonable, but not the cheapest. I think it's kind of a small batch, small mill made yarn. But I was able to kind of stand there and look at a pattern that I thought might work. I'd had this Kallias in my kind of favorites in my queue for a little while. And while it calls for, I think, a proper worsted weight, so I thought it would work. This is definitely closer to an Aran weight, like I said. So what I ended up doing, I did my gauge swatch, and I can't remember exactly where it landed, but when I got the fabric I liked, I did some math, and I ended up knitting size 1, with obviously larger yarn than recommended, but I'm super happy with how it fits. It's very cozy. It worked up really fast when I actually kind of devoted the time to it. I think I started it in April or May, and then like put it away for a good little while, and then once I properly picked it up again, it just flew off the needles because it was so thick, compared to a lot of other weights of yarn that I tend to knit with. So this was a great pattern. Would definitely recommend. It's kind of nice the way that it's a drop shoulder. It means it's cozy. This is a fairly loose fitting shirt that I'm wearing under it, and there's plenty of space in the armpit, and the sleeves aren't too tight. They're kind of just what I want. There's extra space in there, but they're also not mega baggy. So I'm super happy with this project overall. And yeah, the yarn really just shines. Like I said, it is about 20% mohair, so that's what's giving off the little bit of a halo. But because this is like cardigans are always worn over other clothes, it's not immediately next to my skin, aside from like on my arms, and it doesn't bother me there. Where it might bother me would be kind of more around my neck, but it's also a like relatively open collar. It's not a shawl collar, but it kind of has shawl collar vibes. So yeah, really fun pattern. I don't remember a ton of details about the construction, if I'm being honest, but it all is all worked in one. So I believe I started at the back with the collar and kind of worked that a little bit flat, and then picked up stitches for the actual back, and kind of worked what you might expect for like the back wedge, and then picking up the stitches to do the front panels and so on, and then joining in the round once you get under the armpits. So I think it was kind of a typical seamless drop shoulder construction in that way. It definitely was seamless anyways. So then moving on from what I am wearing, let's go into my first finished object. So the first finished object I have to share with you is a pair of socks. And I had made significant progress on these last time I talked, I believe. And these are the Berries and Birdtracks socks. It's a pattern by Yucca, and it's a pattern from 52 Weeks of Socks, Volume 2. You can see them both here. I think on camera the yarn looks like it's pooling a bit, but in person it doesn't show up that much. I think I maybe said that before as well. It's a lovely kind of cabled pattern. Again, in person, you notice the cabled pattern more than you notice the pooling, but it's just a trick of the camera. And these were intended to be for my husband's birthday. Well, they were for my husband's birthday, but I didn't quite finish them for his actual birthday because I wanted him to try them on and check the length. I have a bad habit, especially when knitting socks for him, of thinking that they should be done, and then he tries them on and it looks like they barely got past his ankle. So I didn't want that to happen, so I had them done maybe like a week after his birthday. So here's how they ended up. They're a nice length. I did an eye of partridge heel, or this pattern calls for an eye of partridge heel, which I hadn't actually done before, but I think I will kind of consider it as an option for incorporating into my future vanilla sock patterns. It's kind of a fun one. Not that much to say about the actual pattern. It was well written. It wasn't the fastest knit, just because obviously like many rounds you have to do something, so it's not just a vanilla sock. But yeah, they're really lovely and cozy, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. My next finished object is the Torrin Scarf by the Bea or Rebecca Clow, and it was actually a test knit, and I actually don't have it here to share with you. And the reason for that is because it is with the rest of the items that my guild, Edinburgh Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers, are putting on. Like it's a thing to have to put on display where we're demonstrating at Woolly Good Gathering next week in Edinburgh. So I don't have it here to show, but I have a few pictures I can pop up. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think the texture gets lost in the yarn that I chose to make. When I was spinning that yarn, I was thinking that the tweedy bits would kind of be more incorporated, but I think I probably should have done a lower percentage of sari silk. However, it was an interesting project, and now it's finished, and now I have this mini scarf to decide if I actually like mini scarves. I haven't really had the chance to wear it much because I dropped it off my last guild meeting, which has been a few weeks. The texture was interesting enough. I don't know that I need to particularly repeat it, but it is done now, and I may have an interesting time trying to style it in the future. I'm not really convinced that mini scarves are for me per se, but we'll see. I might give it another go once I get it back next weekend. So yeah, I don't really have that much to say about that pattern. I think I explained pretty much everything on my last episode. My third and final finished object is the French Macaroon baby sweater, and here it is. It's about the simplest shape you could imagine for a sweater. It's literally just a T in garter stitch. It is written to be worked flat and then seamed up. However, I followed some notes that another Ravelry user had left online about how to work it in the round, particularly when getting to the sleeves and whatnot. So actually I didn't do any seam yet. I just had to sew up like under the armpits. I did kind of a Judy's Magic cast on the bottom and a 3 needle bind off on the top, which is what it calls for. So yeah, that's the front. The back is very similar, except there is a little button placket which I haven't chosen a button for yet, but it will fit just like that. And then there's the little neck hole. So very cute overall. This is going to be a gift for a friend back home. You can see what the faux seam looks like. I did a slip stitch instead of properly seaming it up. Yeah, I'm happy with this overall. It's cute. Baby sweaters don't necessarily need the same amount of shaping. They're kind of blob-like when they're little anyways, so it's not quite as crucial. So yeah, I'm happy with this. The yarn, it makes it a little bit heavy, a little bit drapey, which is interesting. It's Cascade Ultra Pima, and this is the 3-month size. No idea if this fits a 3-month bold baby, but hopefully it should fit the baby at some point. They grow so fast that as long as I don't knit it too small, I'm working off the assumption that that it'll fit at some point. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Very cute, very easy knit. It's just a lot of garter stitch, so it didn't take a lot of attention. Yeah, I feel like I'm moving really fast, but it's because socks, there's not that much detail to share about them. Baby sweater, again, not really that complex. It's a very simple shape, and mini scarf, also very easy to explain. So I'll just move on to my WIPS now. So the first WIP is one, I think probably my longest standing WIP. It's been going for like 2 years now, or just about, and it's a cardigan for my husband, and it looks like this at the moment. The last time I shared this with you, I believe I was just finishing up the sleeves, and the sleeves are now done, and I have also, you knit these pockets flat. They're like on the front of the cardigan panel. It's double layered in the back. Oh, this looks horrible. It's double layered, so there's the little pocket lining that I had to seam on. And then once you've done that, you also knit this little button band. So now there are functional pockets on the front, and there's one on each side of they blend in so well, which I guess is a good thing, but it makes it really hard to show you. There's one on each side of the front panel. So I have seamed the pockets. I have these, as a reminder, this piece is Longfellow, and it was worked, it's worked all flat and seamed. So you seam the shoulders, which is pretty straightforward. It's just mattress stitch. And I have also done the side seams. So it's there. I'm going to say I've done a good job because you can barely see it. You can see it on the inside if you would like a closer look. Here's my seam. So it's just mattress stitch, which is one of the mattress stitch on stockinette is like pretty straightforward. It's very easy to line up. You just have to match up the little bars in between columns of stitches. So it's not complicated as long as you have knit everything kind of to pattern, and your front panel matches the length of your back panel. That's the crucial thing, making sure the lengths match up. So yeah, working those side seams is pretty straightforward. The thing that is less straightforward at times is doing the set in sleeve, so sewing in the sleeve to the armhole. I have saved that for last, and at the moment I am actually working on the button band. So for the button band, for this project, you seam everything together and then you pick up stitches all the way around, which is why it looks like this at the moment, because obviously my needle is not long enough for the entire length of the button band. But that means I am so close to being done, and then I will be able to seam in the sleeves as well. I think my plan for sewing in the sleeves is to do the actual sleeve cap, and then I will seam up the actual, like, under the sleeve seam. Just because it should give me a little bit more flexibility for easing everything in exactly right. When sewing in sleeves, it helps to have a lot of pins or stitch markers, lockable stitch markers, and you can kind of line everything up and pin it all together to make sure that all those little curves and corners kind of just fit in exactly as they're meant to. My husband has tried this on in this state and without the button band, so it's obviously a little bit hard to tell if it fits exactly right, but I think it does fit as desired. I haven't actually picked out buttons yet, so once I finish the button band, I think we maybe just will go to a haberdashery and pick something up in person, and he might be able to help me choose, because I don't really have something specific in mind as to what would look good with this. I'm wondering maybe kind of just like plain white or like kind of pearly looking buttons, or some kind of beige situation. I'm not entirely sure, because it's quite a tweedy color. So you don't want, well, I don't think particularly want anything that stands out too much, but we shall see. So yeah, I'm making really good progress on this. The pattern is a Brooklyn tweed pattern, and it's actually one that I mentioned in my last video, so if you haven't seen that and you're interested in men's patterns, I would definitely recommend going and having a look. It's a video all about tips and tricks to finding men's patterns on Ravelry, especially because we all know how tricky it can be to find patterns that are designed specifically for men when pretty much every woman's pattern is also tagged with a male tag. Obviously you can knit any pattern for anybody, but if you want to see patterns that have been modeled on men so you might be able to envision exactly what it looks like, I've included a few tips and tricks on how to do that, as well as some of my favorite designers and favorite go-to resources for finding men's patterns. So go take a look at that if you haven't already. Yeah, but overall, pretty happy with this. There's not really a good reason for why it's taken so long, except for the fact that it's like knit in 4-ply yarn. This is woolly knit, 4-ply merino, so it just has taken a long time. Like, it's not a fast knit, but the finished fabric is really nice. I don't know if you'll be able to see the edge there, how it's knitting up. It really blooms. Like, that looks pretty thin, but once you block it, it blooms so nicely, so that this ribbing here, you can maybe see looks a bit plumper than the start of this ribbing, where the yarn looks really thin and like it's not going to make a nice fabric. So yeah, again, shows the importance of gauge swatching, because there were definitely points at this where I was knitting and felt like this was ridiculously airy and kind of gappy, but once washed, and my gauge swatch was washed, it has just plumped up and fluffed up and makes a really lovely texture. So I would certainly consider this yarn for like a nice lightweight jumper for myself in the future, once I have some motivation to knit myself a 4-ply jumper. We shall see, but it certainly makes a lovely fabric, and I can see why woolly knit is so popular, even held double, to use as a DK. I think it's clearly a great option and very soft. So really happy with that. Now that I'm making progress on all those little bits and pieces, I'm kind of feeling the motivation to just get it finished. Another project that I've made significant progress on, and I don't even know the last time I showed you, is the Porty Pullover by Gudrun Johnson, and it is here. And this is a circular yoke pullover. And the circular yoke I've had done for ages, and then you just knit forever the body and stockinette. It's rolling up a little bit at the moment, and I feel like this makes it look quite cropped, but I need to add a couple of inches of ribbing, and I have literally just done like one round of ribbing. So yeah, I'm finally onto the ribbing. This has been my knitting project for kind of when I really don't want to have to pay attention to the knitting, so like Zoom calls or stuff like that, because it has just been stockinette in the round for ages, and each round is very long. I followed the pattern as written all the way to the underarm and splitting for sleeves, and then I just ignored it from there on pretty much, because there is some body shaping written into this, and I just wanted to knit it straight. I didn't want any kind of waist shaping. So yeah, that has been something I ignored, which I don't think is a major issue. And then I'm not sure what length it said to knit it to, but I was just trying it on to see if it was the length I wanted it to be, and like I said, it looked a little bit cropped here, but I don't want super long sweaters now. I like them to hit kind of high hip, and I've tried it on and compared it to other jumpers that I've knitted, and once I have the ribbing added on, it will be just about perfect. So I think after this I will probably pick up the collar and just finish that off, just so I have a better sense of what it actually looks like, and then I'll just get the sleeves done. Yeah, really lovely pattern overall. I liked the chart. I picked all this yarn up at the Scottish Yarn Festival 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago. So it's nice to actually have used it within a reasonable amount of time. The blue actually came from a cone that I picked up at my guild as well, which I will not be using all of the cones. So I think once I have finished what I need for this project, I'm just going to donate it back and someone else can get some good use out of it. But yeah, that is the Porty Pullover by Gudrun Johnson. And I can't wait to wear this one. My next project, I think I have shared with you at some point in time, but probably not recently because, I don't know, it's a pair of socks and it's not hugely interesting. But I recently went on a trip to London and this was the only project that I took. And these are the Petty Harbour socks. I'm knitting these using Purl 2 Walla Walla's sock yarn. I can't remember the name of it. It's in the colorway Seattle. My grandma picked it out and I said I would knit socks for her if she picked out a color. So yeah, it's a kind of broken rib texture. It is pooling somewhat, as hand-dyed yarn is wont to do, but oh well. So that's the texture. It's nice. I just didn't want to do something kind of boring. And to be honest, if I had knit just vanilla socks, it might have, like, the pooling might have looked even worse. I think it's so interesting actually if you look closely. So I'm working from either end of the yarn. Like, the difference in color, like they're clearly pretty differently colored, like lighter on this end and darker on this end of the yarn, and you can see it in the feet as well. So yeah, we went for kind of a long weekend to London. We were going to see a podcast recording, the Off Menu podcast. If anyone, I'm sure people will know and like that, but if you don't, highly recommend. And we took the train down and I was very restrained and only took one knitting project, these socks, because I haven't been really hugely motivated to work on them, and so I knew if I took them and that was the only thing I had to work on, I would work on them because it's about a 4.5 hour train journey down and back. Not that we had that much time otherwise, so the train was a good place to work on them, and I managed to turn the heels and make some good progress on the legs as well. Before going down, I was kind of midway through the gusset. These are a heel flap and gusset sock. And I actually chose to do an Eye of Partridge heel on these as well. I don't really know what the pattern calls for. I'm really not following the actual pattern of the Petty Harbour socks. I'm pretty much just following my vanilla sock pattern with a texture on there. So yeah, that's where I'm at with these socks. I'm visiting home in June, so I would like to have these done by then so I can give them to my grandma. Because again, I don't know how long I've had this sock yarn. It's a bad habit of holding on to WIPS. But I mean, there's really only a few inches left on there, so if I put some time into it, that shouldn't take too long at all. And then what bag they're in is also one of the few acquisitions I've had of late. I'm trying not to buy too much yarn, but this project bags are not yarn and I can always use more project bags, and I actually picked this up at the Liberty London department store when we were there. So you can see the lovely Liberty fabric, kind of patchwork design. It's just a zipper top. So yeah, it's a fun little project bag. I had actually considered buying some, like if they had fat quarters or that kind of thing, for making my own, and then I realized that they sold pre-made ones, and I do like sewing sometimes, but I knew I wouldn't be hugely motivated anytime soon to do a project bag, so buying the pre-made one was a great option for me. We didn't end up stopping in at any yarn stores while in London, just didn't line up with kind of where we were visiting otherwise. Otherwise I would have considered it and was kind of keeping an eye out, and I think we were semi-close to Beautiful Knitters, but it wasn't at a time when they were open. It was too early in the morning. So we didn't stop at any yarn stores, but it was a great trip anyways, and it's not like I was kind of majorly buying yarn. So yeah, that was a little bit about our London trip, and it was really cool. I'd never actually been to the Liberty store before, so that was definitely a fun one to visit. Gosh, I'm just flying through these projects. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I feel like I've told you about them already. But this one I definitely haven't told you about, though I think it's been in my plans for the year for a few different years. This is the Agnete Cardigan by Petite Knit. I have no idea how you're supposed to pronounce it, but it's been in my queue for ages, and I've had the yarn for like 2 years as well, so I'm finally working on it. This is a brioche cardigan, and I'm knitting it in Nervous Fiber, Cordale, and Surrey Silk. So it's a drop shoulder cardigan, and it's kind of by Petite Knit, and it's kind of knit in the standard way that drop shoulder cardigans tend to be knit. You can see a line there, and that's because that's where I blocked it. So I don't know why the color difference. I don't know if it's just because the silk is fluffed up. It's quite interesting because it definitely looks almost more like a color difference than a texture difference. Hopefully it hasn't washed out. But I'm sure it'll be fine once I block the whole thing. I think it may be partly because in the top the Surrey silk is fluffed up more, and in the bottom it's like not as fluffed up. It's quite interesting. But overall I'd say it looks pretty cohesive. Poppy decided she wanted to come say hello. Say hello to the people. Yeah, that's as much as you're getting. She's not a very expressive doggy. Anyways, so yes, this is the Agnete Cardigan. So far the pattern's really well written. You start out by knitting a small bit of the back collar here. It's a double knit button band. And then you pick up stitches here for the back and increase for the back. And so you have that panel with the lovely kind of shaping running all the way down. And then, yeah, you knit the back to a certain length. And then you stop, put those stitches on hold, and you pick up for the shoulder, the front panel there. So this is the front panel that I've picked up, and at that point you put the button band stitches, you take them off hold and start knitting those along with the front panel. So that's where I'm at right now, and slowly increasing every few rows here. You can see the increases built into the brioche. And yeah, it's moving right along. Let's see, I think the size is about right. It looked a bit small when I was finished with the increases. It didn't look like it was wide enough, but you know how like even though you finish the increases, it can like get a little bit wider looking when you actually start knitting flat past the increases. So that's kind of what's happened here. So as I started knitting flat, I've been more confident that the back panel is actually the right size. So that is positive. So yeah, just working on the front panel at the moment, and then once that reaches a certain length, I'll need to do the other front panel in the same way, and then you join in the round, and, well, not in the round, you join the front and back, and then you have the whole front and back to knit flat. It's not necessarily quick because obviously brioche, you basically knit 2 rows for every 1 row, but I do really like the rhythm of brioche. It doesn't, like, you're not really purling ever, so you're kind of doing a brioche stitch and then slip yarn over. So both sides are like that. It's not half fisherman's rib or half brioche or anything like that. It is just both sides are exactly the same, which makes it lovely and nice and squishy, and it makes it feel like the wrong side row isn't, like, it's not annoying like you might find a purling row if you dislike purling. The one thing I'm gonna have to keep an eye out on is obviously the body is knit flat, but the sleeves are knit in the round, and it can be easy to have a different gauge when you're knit flat versus knit in the round. I'm not sure if it'll be an issue here because effectively all of the kind of knit looking columns are all knit. I do think I had a problem with it when I was knitting the Seasons cardigan, which I knit as a sample knit for Nervous Fiber, and then that's why I got this yarn in return. So I just am gonna need to take a look back at my notes and see what the issue was there when comparing my in flat gauge to my in the round gauge. I think that one had more problems though because it was a heavier yarn and it was a superwash yarn, whereas this is a lighter weight. It's obviously fingering weight along with Surrey silk, so I don't think the weight of the fabric itself is going to be pulling on it as much. But yeah, I'm really happy with the fabric so far. It's lovely and soft and fluffy. I love alpaca as an option to an alternative to mohair, so I'm very happy with that at the moment. And the color as well is, especially if it's more like this washed out gray color at the top, it feels more cohesive than at the bottom. So I don't know exactly why that is, but I think it doesn't read particularly as like a hand-dyed multicolored yarn. I'm nearly at the end of my ball, so it's really hard to see. But even though it is a hand-dyed yarn that does have a little bit of variation in it, this fabric definitely hides that variation. And because it's brioche, I am not going to alternate my skeins, so hopefully they're dyed consistently, and I'm thinking that this fabric will kind of hide it a little bit. And because I'm using a sari silk along with a standard 4-ply fingering weight yarn, it should hide any kind of inconsistencies, but the yarns all looked really consistent anyways. So that is all the knitting that I have to share with you, and the last thing that I want to share is a little bit of spinning. So I think this is the same project I shared a month ago, and it's ongoing. This skein I've had done for a few months. It was the first of a combo spin skein, and these are the three bobbins that are spun together to make this. So you can see there is some color variation. This was the 2 lighter color skeins combined. This has all 3 combined in a more consistent way, and this was like a bat that I made. The top one is a bat that I made that had some of the dark intertwined with some of the light, but like in a less consistent way. So you can see the kind of bobbins that I'm starting out with, and then the resulting skein. And I think I had not yet finished the singles for this bobbin when I last spoke to you, and now I've finished all the singles, and I recently finished plying another skein, so you can see there. And that's what that looks like plied. I'm pretty happy with it overall, and I think hopefully these look pretty consistent to me. I think these look pretty consistent. I obviously need to actually skein this up with my Nitty Knotty. Honestly, plying this took so long because it is effectively a fingering weight yarn. It's a lot of plying, and I think I still probably, I'm hoping the rest of these will, this is called a lazy cape, by the way, if you aren't into spinning, fun fact. I'm hoping the rest of these will all fit on this big jumbo bobbin. It'll be close, but we'll see. And I clearly do have way more of this single than I do of the other 2, so we'll see what happens there. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with the leftovers, but I guess we'll just see where we get to at the end and make a decision from there. But yeah, that is the bit of spinning that I have to share with you. So that is all the projects that I have ongoing at the moment. I do have some future plans. I'm going to be working on some more baby knits. I'm going to be working on the anchor sweater, whatever the child version of that is called, and I also still have some ongoing projects that I haven't spoken about that I may be picking up soon, depending on how far I get on my existing WIPs that I'm wanting to focus on more. Thanks for sitting and chatting with me today. I really appreciate you spending your time here, and if you enjoyed this video, I would always appreciate a like, comment, or subscribe, and I will see you again on the next one. Bye!